Your bacon is a scam. You bought it 6 days ago, but it's already turning grey at the edges. There's a smell when you open the package, something sour and chemical. By day 7, it's slimy, and you throw it away. Now travel back to 1547. An Austrian farmer salted a pig, smoked it with beech wood, and hung it in his cellar. 16 months later, his family ate that ham on Easter Sunday. It wasn't just safe, it even tasted better than fresh. What did a medieval farmer with an axe and a pile of wood know that your modern supermarket has forgotten? Today, we're revealing what salt, smoke, and time can do that refrigeration and plastic can't, and why the food industry doesn't want you to know the difference. Pick up a package of supermarket bacon and look at the ingredient list. You'll see water. Not moisture from the meat itself, but added water. Industrial processors inject your bacon with salt water using machines with dozens of needles. They call this enhancing, but it really is fraud. A modern piece of bacon can contain 15 to 25% added water. You are paying meat prices for tap water mixed with phosphates and salt. If you buy a $10 pack of bacon, you just spent $2 on water. Across America, families lose $2 billion every year buying water that's been labeled as food. But the water isn't just stealing your money, it's killing your meat. Water activity is the scientific term for how much water is available for bacteria to use. Pure water has a score of 1.0. Fresh raw meat sits around 0.98. Bacteria love this. Salmonella can't grow below 0.95. E. coli stops at 0.95. Listeria, the bacteria that kills 60 people a year in the United States, needs 0.92 or higher. Your modern bacon, pumped full of profit water, sits at 0.96 to 0.97. It is a bacterial paradise wrapped in plastic. Medieval bacon? After weeks of salting and smoking, it hit 0.85 to 0.88. At that level, nothing grows. Not bacteria, not mold, not yeast. The meat becomes chemically hostile to life. It doesn't need refrigeration because there's nothing left for microbes to eat. Here's where it gets worse. That water they inject isn't pure. It contains sodium phosphate, a chemical that makes the muscle fibers swell and hold more liquid. When you cook modern bacon, watch what happens. A white foam bubbles out into the pan. That's the added water escaping, carrying dissolved proteins with it. The bacon shrinks, sometimes by 30%. You're not cooking bacon, you're boiling injected meat in its own chemical bath. The industry has known this since the 1950s, when mechanical injection became standard. Before that, bacon was cured the old way, rubbed with salt, left to rest for weeks and smoked. It lost 25% of its weight during curing. That weight loss was expensive. So the industry found a way to not just stop the loss, they found a way to add weight back. They turned a preservation method into a profit method, and your health became the cost. But here's the part that should make you angry. They label this wet, injected, bacteria-friendly product as natural and traditional. Some packages say uncured. They use celery powder instead of sodium nitrite and claim it's healthier and more authentic. It's a lie. Celery powder is just concentrated nitrates from vegetables. When bacteria in the meat convert those nitrates to nitrites, it's the exact same chemical your body sees. The only difference is the label and the price. You pay $3 more per pound for marketing. The medieval farmer didn't inject his meat with water. He did the opposite. He pulled every drop of moisture out, turned the flesh into something that would outlast winter, sieges, and sea voyages. His meat was food designed to endure. Yours is designed to expire. Let's go back to that Alpine smokehouse. Because what happened inside that wooden shed over 6 weeks was not primitive. It was sophisticated chemical engineering that worked with the physics of preservation. The process began the day the pig was slaughtered. The farmer cut the meat into large slabs, hams, bellies, shoulders. Within hours, while the meat was still warm, he packed it in pure coarse salt, pressed into every surface. The goal wasn't flavoring, but chemical warfare. Salt is a weapon. When you pack meat in salt, osmosis begins immediately. Water inside the muscle cells is pulled toward the salt crystals on the surface. The cells shrink. The liquid that escapes carries blood, bacteria, and nutrients that microbes need to survive. Over the next 7 days, the meat would lose 15% of its weight, all of it water draining away into the salt bed below. But here's the genius. Medieval people didn't just salt once. After a week, they scraped off the wet, bloody salt and applied fresh, dry salt. Then they did it again. By the third salting, the meat was firm, dark red, and dry to the touch. If you measured the water activity now, it would be around 0.92. Low enough to stop most bacteria, but not low enough to be completely safe. That's where the smoke came in. The smokehouse was a stone or wooden building with a fire pit separated from the meat by a long flue or underground channel. The smoke that reached the hanging meat was cold, below 30 degrees Celsius. This was critical. Hot smoke would cook the exterior, forming a hard crust that trapped moisture inside. Cold smoke did the opposite. It dried the meat slowly while depositing an invisible army of preservative chemicals on every surface. Wood smoke contains over 200 different compounds. The most important are phenols and organic acids. Phenols come from lignin, the tough polymer that gives wood its structure. When wood burns at low temperatures, lignin breaks apart and releases chemicals like guaiacol and syringol. These phenols are disinfectants. They penetrate the surface of the meat and kill bacteria on contact. They also stop fat from going rancid, which is why smoked meat doesn't develop that sour, spoiled smell even after months. The organic acids, acetic acid, propionic acid, do something even more clever. They lower the pH of the meat's surface to around 5.0. Bacteria can't survive in acid. But here's the trick. These acids don't just sit on the surface. They're small molecules. They slip through the bacterial cell wall and get inside. Once inside, where the pH is neutral, the acid molecule breaks apart and floods the cell with hydrogen ions. The bacteria has to use all its energy trying to pump these ions back out. It exhausts itself and dies. The smoke doesn't just coat the meat, it turns the meat into a trap. After 6 weeks, the ham was removed from the smokehouse. It was hard, nearly black on the outside, and had lost 25 to 30% of its original weight. It smelled like wood and salt. The farmer wrapped it in cloth, hung it in a cool, dry cellar, and left it. 1 year later, when he cut into that ham, the interior was deep red, firm, and safe, only using salt, smoke, and thyme. This wasn't a rare practice. Monasteries in Germany kept records showing hams stored for 18 months without spoilage. Ships crossing the Atlantic in the 1600s carried barrels of salt pork that remained edible for the entire voyage, 6 months at sea with no refrigeration. In 1841, a food inspector in Belfast tested hams imported from Westphalia, Germany. He reported that after 12 months in a dry cellar, they were superior in flavour and preservation to any local product. The method worked because it respected the biology of decay. It didn't try to trick bacteria with chemicals. It removed what bacteria needed to survive: water, oxygen, and a neutral pH. It was a fortress built from salt and smoke. And once that fortress was complete, the meat was untouchable. Now let's talk about why this worked at the level most people never see: the molecular level. Bacteria need 3 things to grow: food, water, and the right environment. Medieval preservation attacked all 3. Let's start with water. Scientists call this water activity, written as a -W. It's a scale from 0 to 1. Pure water is 1.0. Fresh meat is 0.98. This number tells you how much water is free for bacteria to use. When you add salt to meat, something happens that most people don't understand. The salt doesn't just sit there. It dissolves into the water inside the meat and breaks apart into sodium and chloride ions. These ions attract water molecules and lock them in place. The water is still there, but it's no longer available. The bacteria can't access it. Think of it like this. Imagine a room full of chairs. If the chairs are empty, people can sit down. But if every chair has a coat draped over it, the room is full but useless. Salt ions are the coats. They occupy the water molecules. When you push the water activity below 0.95, you've covered enough chairs that most bacteria can't find anywhere to sit. They starve. But medieval bacon didn't stop at 0.95. It went down to 0.85 or lower. At that point, even the toughest bacteria, things like Staphylococcus aureus, can barely function. Mold can't even start until you hit 0.80. The meat becomes a biological desert. Now add the smoke. When wood burns slowly, it doesn't just make flavour, it makes chemistry. One of the key reactions is called pyrolysis. That's when heat breaks down the wood's structure without flames. Lignin, the compound that makes wood hard, falls apart into smaller molecules. These molecules are phenols. Phenols are the same chemicals used in antiseptic mouthwash and hospital disinfectants. When phenolic smoke touches the surface of the meat, these molecules don't bounce off. They stick. They react with the proteins on the surface and form a thin, tough layer called a pellicle. This pellicle is like shrink wrap. It locks in the remaining moisture and locks out oxygen and airborne bacteria. But the phenols also do something inside the meat. They move through the muscle fibers and attach to fat molecules. Fat normally goes rancid when it reacts with oxygen. The phenols block this reaction. That's why a 2-year-old ham doesn't smell like rotten fat. The smoke neutralized the chemistry of decay before it could start. The third layer of defense is pH. The organic acids in smoke, mostly acetic acid, the same acid in vinegar, lower the surface pH of the meat to around 5.0 or lower. This matters because bacteria have a comfort zone. Most pathogens prefer a pH between 6.5 and 7.5, close to neutral. When you drop the pH to 5.0, their enzymes stop working. Their cell membranes get damaged. But here's the part that makes it lethal. Those acid molecules are small. They slip through the bacterial cell wall. Once inside, they break apart and release hydrogen ions. The inside of the bacterial cell floods with acid. The bacteria spends all its energy trying to pump the acid out. Then it just exhausts itself and dies. This is called the hurdle effect. Each method, salt, smoke, drying, creates a barrier. Alone, each barrier might slow bacteria down. Together they create a wall that nothing can cross. Medieval meat didn't just resist decay, it became chemically programmed to destroy anything that tried to spoil it. Your modern bacon has none of this. The 15% added water keeps the water activity dangerously high. The liquid smoke flavour is sprayed on for taste, not preservation. There's no pellicle, no phenolic barrier, no pH shift. The meat is soft, wet and welcoming to bacteria. The only thing standing between your bacon and complete rot is a 40-degree refrigerator and a plastic wrapper. Cut the power for 12 hours and your $10 package becomes a biohazard. So if the old method was superior, safer, longer lasting, more resilient, why did we abandon it? 3 reasons: speed, cost, and the cold chain. After World War II, America needed to feed a booming population. Meat processors wanted to move product fast. Traditional curing took 6 to 8 weeks. Dry salting, slow smoking, and careful storage was too slow for industrial scale. So in the 1950s, engineers invented brine injection. Instead of waiting for salt to diffuse into the meat over weeks, they could force it in using needles in seconds. A machine with 40 needles could inject an entire ham in under a minute. But injection did something else. It added weight. When you inject a saltwater solution into meat, the muscle fibers swell. They hold the liquid like a sponge. A 10-pound ham could become 11 or 12 pounds overnight. The processor didn't lose 25% to drying. They gained 15% in added water. Every pound of water sold at the price of meat was pure profit. The industry loved it, and consumers didn't notice at first. The meat looked plump and fresh. It was only when you cooked it that the truth literally came out. That white liquid pouring into your pan isn't fat. It's the injected water escaping, mixed with dissolved proteins and phosphates. You're watching your money evaporate. Then there's the label game. In the 1970s, consumers started worrying about nitrites. Studies linked them to cancer when cooked at high heat. The industry had a problem. Nitrites prevent botulism and give bacon its pink color. Without them, bacon turns grey and dangerous. So instead of removing nitrites, they found a loophole. Celery powder. Celery naturally contains high levels of nitrates. When you add celery powder to meat along with a bacterial starter culture, the bacteria convert the nitrates into nitrites. It's the exact same chemical, the exact same effect. But because it comes from a vegetable, the USDA lets you label it uncured and no nitrates added. Consumers see natural and pay $3 more per pound. The industry gets to keep using nitrites while charging a premium for hiding it. This is the modern food system. Optimize for profit, add water, use loopholes, market the illusion of tradition while doing the opposite. But there's a darker reason we abandoned the old ways: the cold chain. In the 1960s and 70s, refrigeration became cheap and universal. Every truck, every warehouse, every store had coolers. If you could keep meat cold from slaughter to table, you didn't need to preserve it. You could sell it wet, fresh, and profitable. Preservation became unnecessary, except it wasn't unnecessary. It was insurance. Medieval people preserved meat because they had to survive winter, survive war, and survive crop failures. Their food had to last. Our food only has to last until the next shopping trip. We traded resilience for convenience. And now, when the power goes out or the supply chain breaks, our food dies in days. So what can you do about this? You have 3 options. Find real preserved meat, make it yourself, or at least learn to recognize the fakes. First, finding the real thing. Look for products labeled country ham or dry cured. These are closer to the medieval method. They're salted, aged, and sometimes smoked without injection. They'll be hard, dark, and expensive. A real country ham costs $3 to $5 per pound more than grocery store ham, but it's not filled with water. You're paying for meat, not markup on tap water. Check for the word dry cured specifically. Wet cured means it was soaked or injected. Dry cured means it was packed in salt and aged. If the package says water added anywhere in the ingredients, put it back. You're buying a sponge. Second, you can make it yourself. It's not as hard as you think. You need 3 things: salt, time, and patience. Start with a pork belly. Weigh it. Use 2% of that weight in salt. So for a 5-pound belly, that's about 3 ounces of salt. Mix the salt with a small amount of curing salt, also called pink salt or Prague powder No. 1. This contains sodium nitrite and prevents botulism. You can buy it online. It's not optional if you're curing at home. Rub the salt mixture over every surface of the meat. Place it in a non-reactive container, glass or food-grade plastic. Put it in your refrigerator. Every 2 days, flip it and drain any liquid that accumulates. After 7 days, rinse the meat under cold water and pat it dry. Now you let it dry. Wrap it in cheesecloth and hang it in a cool, dry place. A basement, a spare refrigerator with the door cracked anywhere between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Let it hang for 2 to 4 weeks. The meat will lose 15 to 20% of its weight. It will firm up. The fat will turn slightly translucent. If you want to smoke it, cold smoke it for 8 to 12 hours using hardwood like oak or hickory. Keep the temperature below 80 degrees. When it's done, the bacon will be hard, dark, and nothing like supermarket bacon. It will last months in your refrigerator or weeks at room temperature if kept dry. Slice it thin. The flavor is intense, salty, smoky, concentrated. This is what bacon was for 1,000 years before we decided to add water and call it progress. Third, learn to spot the frauds. If your bacon leaks white liquid when you cook it, it was injected. If it shrinks by more than 10% in the pan, it was pumped with water. If it says uncured but lists celery powder, it still has nitrites. You're being lied to with a vegetable. The medieval farmer with his smokehouse wasn't a primitive. He was an engineer who understood that food is chemistry. He knew that water is the enemy of preservation. He knew that smoke is medicine. He knew that time, not shortcuts, creates safety. We forgot that. We traded his fortress for a cold chain and called it improvement. But when the power goes out, when the trucks stop running, when the store shelves empty, his bacon would still be hanging in the cellar, safe and ready. Yours would be rotting in a plastic bag. If you're learning something valuable here, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us share this forgotten knowledge with more people who are tired of being sold water at the price of food. The secret to meat that lasts isn't in a lab or a factory. It's in salt, smoke, and the patience to let chemistry do its work. Medieval bacon was food designed to survive. Yours is designed to sell. The choice is yours. Subscribe, and let's keep digging up what they buried.